57. That is the 57th episode of the Back to Football podcast. That is the number one podcast for people who probably should talk about something other than football. John Miller joins me today with the Wenger in hashtag in his name. John, it seems like an age ago since we started the podcast up with some ropey tech and echoes all around the on the final product. But yeah, 57 episodes in, going strong.
Yeah, going strong. Just love having a chat with you boys. It's all the more better when Arsenal have a good result, but as we'll come on to later, it's sorry times.
Yes.
Sorry times for Arsenal and good times for Spurs, which
yeah, well, we will be covering both of those teams on the pod today, and we're joined by someone who is inevitably very happy about their result this week. Spurs fan, Mr. Greg TMR. Greg Hollands, how are you?
Yeah, man, all good. Good weekend of sport. It wasn't the most pleasant viewing experience I've ever had, but I'm glad that it ended the way it did, and the way the weekend ended was brilliant as well.
It was. We've had several kind of announcements today in terms of some things that will affect football in particular, with crowd numbers, I guess, or fans being allowed back into stadiums. We're hearing this 4,000 is the figure that's kind of made the headlines, but I think there's some sort of relation to the tier system that Boris is putting into place, sort of post December 2nd. Now, obviously, this is something that, fans back in stadiums is a great thing. Does 4,000 fans in somewhere like Old Trafford, does that make any difference whatsoever? And how on earth would you go about actually selecting those 4,000 lucky fans that would get to go and see a game like that? I'll come to Greg on that one first.
I think that in terms of sport, and especially football, and especially the parameters of the podcast, is a great sort of bit of news to come out today. I think in the wider aspect of the situation, it might not be, but that's probably a different conversation to be had. I can imagine, I don't know, this is the problem. I'd like to think it's going to be a sort of ballot, maybe, of, season ticket holders, maybe get selected and chosen. But, I mean, from what we've seen from the Premier League this season, it could be the highest bidders, really, couldn't it? Whoever's willing to throw the most money at you gets to be in those games. But I think it's a good sign going forward. It's just whether it makes a difference. I think that it will make a bigger difference for Championship, League One and League Two than it would Premier League, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe there'll be a bit more of a spread, because there'll be some teams in League Two that have average attendances way below 4,000, I would think. So maybe we'll see people that would go to a Championship game or a Premier League game that is going to inevitably easily fill that 4,000 quota. I mean, I'm thinking somewhere like Liverpool and Anfield, if they are going on the kind of who's had their season ticket the longest type thing, there's going to be people on there that have had 40 years. You're probably looking at like 40 years of season ticket membership to even get into that 4,000 group, I would think.
But then they're probably the most vulnerable if they've had it for 40 years.
Yeah, that is a good point. That is a very good point. John, do you think Arsenal can fill 4,000 seats at the Emirates?
I don't know at the moment. Although I think they need it. I think they need a bit of a crowd there to get going, because I think apart from the Fulham performance, which was away from home, we've been very, very flat. Yeah, I'm not saying that's the reason for Arsenal's bad performances, but we need something.
Yeah,
we need something. But yeah, no, I concur with Greg. I think the lower league teams, I think where, they don't have the TV money or from Sky and all the rest of it. I think it's vital for them. Some clubs have gone out of business or whatever, so it's vital that happens. And like Greg says, there is some, should it happen, should it not happening? Are we just going to put ourselves in another situation until vaccines become available?
Yeah.
As Greg said, that's a conversation for another podcast. But
yeah,
but yeah, I think overall for that, because funnily enough, I didn't actually realize until like quite recently, a couple of weeks ago, that the crowd noise that we hear, they don't hear. That's just for us. I thought they heard it. I don't know why I missed that one. So that it's for them. It's like training games. You
Yeah.
know? Like
Yeah.
training. So for them to actually, have that's going to feel like really loud for them.
Mm.
What they've been used to for the last
Yeah.
however long. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Did you think that they pumped the noise into the
I
stadium?
did.
Like at supermarkets when they play the bird noises outside to ward off pigeons and seagulls, they play like the noise of eagles. You thought that was what was going on inside
Yeah,
the
I thought they were
stadiums.
pumping music into that stadium and pumping.
Yeah, I think they were doing that in the Bundesliga in the first few games that they
Yeah,
played
they were.
back, like Dortmund and stuff. They were playing a lot of music in the ground, but yeah, you're right. It's literally been like training games, and you'd think there'd be some sort of impact at least on the player communication as well on the pitch, and especially if you're like, I know that there's like the language of football as such, and there are certain things that are kind of a given, and a lot of these players at the top level will probably make a run without having to be told or pass the ball without having to be told, but you would think there has to be some sort of impact, and I'd like to think that there's someone out there kind of looking at that and studying that, how the actual reduced ambient noise in a stadium actually, what effect that has on player communication, especially if you're non-English speaking or you're playing on a team with no one that you kind of have a common tongue with as such. I know there was the thing earlier in the season with I think it was Azpilicueta conversing with Thiago Silva in French, because obviously Zuma, Mendy, and Thiago Silva all speak French, and Azpilicueta, being the genius that he is, also speaks French. I don't know whether he played in the French league. I think he's just very well educated. But yeah, like those kind of things. Surely, crowd noise has to have an effect, because like certain stadiums are very loud, and you're thinking, if you're right down in front of a stand or something. But yeah, I don't know whether 4,000 will be enough to kind of shift the momentum with that, but it will certainly be interesting. Another thing that came out this week, which was I think a Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, announcement, was this winter care package type thing for sports kind of all across the UK. Greg, have you got the info on that and how the money actually breaks down?
Yeah, I have actually. He announced it really weird. Like the tweet is really weird. He's using like emojis and all of that. It didn't seem like a politician's tweet. But basically, it's 300 million. And it's called the Sport Winter Survival Package.
Nice.
And this is the breakdown for you. So rugby union gets 135 million of that 300 million. Horse racing is next. It gets 40 million. Football, 28 million. Motorsport, 6. Tennis, 5. Netball, 4. Basketball, 4. Ice hockey, 4. And badminton, 2 million. I don't know if they published the reasoning behind any of it, but there's a huge disparity in the fact that it's 300 million and nearly half of that is going towards rugby union. It's pretty mental.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone saw Eddie Hearn, his open letter today to a local MP. Boxing gets barely any. I don't think it gets anything.
No,
Right.
it wasn't even on the list, I don't think.
No. What are your thoughts on that, John? Because obviously you're the sort of boxing expert out of all of us.
Yeah, I think that was just ridiculous. I mean, that was one of the first things I replied when I saw it, didn't I, in the WhatsApp group? And I just think it's just been massively overlooked. I get, even if it was a couple of million, it's not to go to Queensbury or to Matchroom. It would be, those small horse shows that just haven't happened. Yes,
Yep.
we've had some boxing behind closed doors, but that's because, Matchroom have got loads of money. They can suffer the hit and, they get some Sky Sports money and some sponsorship. They can, yes, you might get a bit of a pay cut, but you can still get out there. We've had some great fights. Chisora has been out, Usyk, lots of good fights have happened. But those that are promoters that do like the smaller horse shows, York Hall, the rest of it, they haven't been out at all. So there's people, I was listening to a boxing podcast, and there's people who were like pretty much like put their career on hold to go get and have a job so they can put food on the table, because they can't get out,
Yeah.
get a run out, because they're not a big draw. They probably can sell about a couple of hundred tickets, which would be all right, but they can't even do that. But what they would usually do, because no one's coming in, and it's just, I think that's massively overlooked. Plus, like all the clubs as well, all of the it's an Olympic sport. It's an Olympic
Yeah.
sport, for crying out loud. It's just horrendous. And if you click the one of the links that is in his tweet, it actually takes you to the government website. And obviously, what's not in that list in his tweet is actually rugby league, and they actually get 12 million. So if you add that to 35 million, my maths ain't great, but that's what, 157 million, or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's like half of it on rugby. It's just it's just so, I don't even want it. It's just so political.
Yeah.
And so,
What did cricket get out of interest? Is that on the list? Do you know? I know it wasn't in the tweet.
It's not. Greyhound racing gets 1 million.
Yeah,
spend it on dog food.
Yeah,
pedigree chum.
But yeah, I mean, it is. It's so like that is disproportionate, and it's not to say that rugby union, rugby league doesn't need that money, but everyone else also needs that money. So yeah, it does seem like an unfair split for sure. I mean, my sort of initial reasoning was that perhaps it's where the TV money, you have players and we compete in the Heineken Cup and these big European leagues, and the salaries are pretty high in rugby union, and maybe they're not getting as much TV money because there tends to only be one TV network that picks up. I can't remember. Is it Premier League Rugby? Isn't it? Is that what it's called? The Wasps and Harlequins and all of that. So therefore, you've got like whichever network wants to buy it for a set price, and you don't have the competitive element of Sky bidding against BT, bidding against Prime, and all of that. So I'd imagine the TV pot is probably a lot lower. But in terms of a national sport, it might be. It's certainly up there. That and cricket are probably our two.
I don't see cricket on the list though. I'm not to say that they not getting anything, but they're not on the list. Maybe they're not getting anything.
Yeah,
but,
certainly. I mean, in terms of a class, if you're looking at it from like a class point of view, and a conservative government kind of looking after slightly kind of more middle class sports, then I'm sure cricket is getting a fair wedge in there.
I mean, I just find it odd that two sports which involve animals and betting are getting other sports, but they're getting more than sports that actually involve humans.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, greyhound racing getting 1 million, surely boxing could have got 1 million. I just think, and maybe
what was the figure for boxing in the end?
Nothing. There wasn't any.
There was nothing for boxing.
No. That's what Eddie Hearn's complaining. I mean, we know that for sure. We don't know. It's not reported.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything. But for boxing, we know because promoters have come out. Boxers have come out that there is nothing, because they're saying why is there nothing, and no one from cricket's come out as far as I'm aware. So I would assume that they might not be on the list, but maybe they're getting a few 100,000 or something. As opposed to 1 million, because the lowest on the list is 1 million.
Right.
So it could just be that's why they're on the list, and those in the hundreds of thousands, they might not make the list, right? Don't know, but boxing's getting zero pence, which is odd. I just, in my opinion, I think, I think some of those Olympic sports could have got a little bit more. Track and field, taekwondo, or the rest of it, swimming.
Yep.
They could have got something. I just think it's a bit out of order that it's so disproportionate. They could have, given them 120 million if rugby really needed it. And 15 million could have gone a long way. To some of the other sports that looks as if they didn't get anything.
Yeah, I wonder if there's been any kind of redistribution of lottery funding as well during this time, because I know the national lottery, a lot of that money goes into particularly athletics, and I do wonder whether boxing falls under some sort of like Olympic purse in terms of, like you say, it's an Olympic sport. Does that then mean that they get a block grant? I don't know. I'm just
I think there is
I'm
definitely
riffing, but
TV funding and stuff,
yeah.
but again, I'm not sure, and maybe we just need some more information on this. But
Yeah,
there wouldn't be, if it was enough that they were getting the redistribution, there wouldn't be
Yeah.
such outcry. And like Greg said, like Eddie Hearn's, put an open letter out and all the
Sure.
rest. And there's lots of, up and coming boxers,
Yep.
journeymen that get a couple of grand just to get punched in the face in
Yeah.
the last couple of rounds that just haven't been able to get out because they just can't. They're not getting on those smaller shows.
Yeah, I mean, while we're on the topic, and advanced apologies to Mr. Tom Nuttall-Jones, who hates any kind of fight talk. He's not too much of a combat sports fan, but 3 quick fights to literally spend 30 seconds on each. But Dubois and Joyce this weekend. John, who are you expecting to come out victorious in that?
It's a tough one. I mean, if I was putting my money on it, I'd put it on Joyce just because he's got the amateur pedigree. He's been in there with the likes of Usyk. He's a lot older. Daniel Dubois, I think, only had something like 7. I'm going to throw that number out there. Amateur fights. If he wins, then people will look at Dubois as a real contender. But I'm putting my money on Joyce. As well as that, Joyce is older. It's kind of do or die. It's a long way back if he loses. I think if Dubois loses, I think he can come back. He's 21, 22, something like that.
Yeah.
He can come back and go again, get some
Joyce
good fights.
in his 30s, isn't he? I think?
Yeah, Joyce is like 30, 33 or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of last chance saloon for him, I reckon.
Cool. Second fight is the Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. fighting on Saturday night. That's an interesting one. What's likely to happen there?
I don't know. Hopefully they've got some defibrillators, nearby. I mean, that's nostalgia. I don't think it's going to be anything how people have seen. There's been a few tweets, bit of 2-second tweets of people like moving really quickly, hitting some pads. I would put my money on Roy Jones. I know, I just think Mike Tyson's older. I think the way how he finished it, well, they both finished their career getting some bad knockouts, but I don't know. I just think Mike Tyson's older. He's had more like wear and tear on his body in terms of what he's done to his body. Drink, drugs, alcohol, all the rest of it. And I just think Roy Jones has probably kept himself in better shape, and I think he'll probably win that point.
In their prime, they were different weight classes, or
they were, they were, yeah.
Right. And then finally, I'll come to Greg on this one. There's been a lot of hype around it this week from the absolute helmet that is Logan Paul, trying to sort of promote this fight with Floyd Mayweather. Surely he gets absolutely schooled if he even, steps one round in the ring with Floyd. But yeah, do you think that fight's going to happen?
Look, the way I see it is that Logan Paul knows good marketing. He will keep pressing this as long as it keeps his name trending on Twitter and all that. And Floyd Mayweather loves money. I mean, he fights to get the money, and then he loses it all, and then he fights again and loses it all. So offer him another big enough bag. I think he takes it because he knows that he wins that fight. It would be. I think I don't even know if it would be a good fight to watch. Really, it would just be because Logan Paul isn't a good fighter by any means. We know this from the YouTube boxing. He's a big guy, but in terms of boxing, he's not really that impressive, and especially against probably one of the best boxers out there.
The best boxer, probably.
Right, exactly.
Living, I would think. Would you agree,
right,
John?
Yeah, he's definitely up there.
Yeah.
So it's a no contest really, but I mean, they'll keep at it as long as it keeps them both in the headlines, and if they can both make a bit of money off of it, that's all it is really.
Yeah, be a huge payday for Logan Paul, you would think.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the 3 fights to quickly touch on. I think you mentioned just before we came on air as well that Conor McGregor rematch is confirmed for January. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
right?
Dustin Poirier, that would be good.
Well, he
You know,
was
Conor McGregor's
retired.
all in the box office.
Yeah,
He was retired.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
yo-yo, the retirement yo-yo that is Conor
Yeah.
McGregor.
Yeah.
All right, let's which we haven't done for a while. Let's go back to football. Seeing as we are the Back to Football podcast, the number one podcast for people who probably should talk about something other than football. Our next topic is Spurs. You can see there, No Way Jose is our title for this segment. Now, Spurs are sitting top of the league right now. They're playing good football. They're playing football that gets Premier League points, which I think is the most important thing. I'll come to John on this one first, as the Arsenal fan on the podcast. Do they have the pedigree and the squad power and the experience with Jose to stay at the top of the league now and genuinely kind of compete for this title?
Before yesterday's game, I would have said yes, 100%. Jose is a serial winner. You know, he doesn't go very long without winning something with any team that he's won something with every team, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he never got a full season last season, which is why it doesn't really count, right? But so you got Jose on your side, you can never count against him.
Yeah.
You've got the squad. You know, Harry Kane is, although people are saying, oh, he hasn't scored as much, to me, he's on fire. When you watch a game, right, he's actually on fire. And like, he's creating, he's still scoring. His strike rate's not poor. He's just not the focal point anymore. And I think that's a good thing, because so I'm going to sidestep slightly here. If you look at Arsenal, they're still trying to do what they did, what was successful last season, which is Aubameyang out on the wide, right?
Yep.
Teams have figured it out. You know, if Jose would have gone with the tactics that were playing last season, which was just Kane not dropping off as much and being that focal point, I think teams would have figured it out. I think he's been clever. He's made some adjustments to the side. Teams keeping the opposition on their toes when it comes to them working Spurs out tactically. And I think it's working. It's absolutely working. And I think you look at, you know, Lo Celso comes off the bench, gets a goal. I definitely think they've got the squad depth to do it. He's had that time with them now.
Yep.
Obviously, you watched the All or Nothing documentary, and you can see then, even last season, that, you know, things were starting to come together. But it was more about mindset and mentality, and that whole thing that Arsenal fans and other fans used to say, "Oh, Spurs, they're going to Spurs it up. They're in the cup final, or they're a few games to go. They'll Spurs it up. They'll miss." It's just getting them out of that mindset of them. They are winners. They can be winners. They need to be CUNTs, as he says on the show, and just not be nice. And I think he's kind of getting out of them now. That started to come out, and I'm a little bit nervous. I mean, I'm not massively nervous, because if they win it, I'll still, as an Arsenal fan, say, well, we've won it more times than you, right? But I still don't want them to win it. But yesterday, with all them injuries, and they still beat a good Leicester side, 3-0. I think it'd be hard for Spurs to topple Liverpool.
Yeah. Greg, some optimism?
I think, okay, so so far this season, before the City game, we played teams that we should have beaten and got points against. Saturday was a real test to see if we were any good. And it wasn't good football. It wasn't particularly that good football, as I said. Like, it was the most unpleasant 90 minutes of my life, I think. But we got the points. We did exactly what we needed to. If we're still in the same position or a similar position in a month's time, because we've got some difficult fixtures coming up, then we're dangerous. Do you know what I mean? We're looking dangerous. It is just that thing of, and John said it, Eric Dyer had an interview after the game, and he said, we're not Spursy anymore. That's not us anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that mentality is absolutely key. I think, as you say in the All or Nothing documentary, Jose's instilling that philosophy in the players, and even the players that we brought in. I've said it before on the podcast, like, they're not particularly glamorous signings, really. I mean, Bale a couple of years ago would have been much better than he is now, probably, but he's won 4 Champions Leagues and however many La Ligas with Real Madrid. Højbjerg, has played every minute of our season so far and been absolutely class for every one of those. Eric Dyer is performing better. Our defence against Man City was the best I've seen it in a long, long time. I've said on this podcast that it'll be the defence that lets us down. If they play like they did Saturday, then we're very solid. And I've said it again, against the West Ham game, I said this result doesn't matter as much as the response does. And I think that game was just as important as any other game. I think for that mentality, we sort of needed that. We needed to drop points against Everton at the beginning of the season. Granted, we didn't know that they were going to be as good as they were. And the capitulation against West Ham, it's those games that are building this club. And yeah, it's an exciting time. I'm not massively hopeful. I don't think we can win I don't think we will win the Premier League. I think we could this year. But look, Jose Mourinho has been in the job for 1 year. Imagine where we could be next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the thing that I'm looking forward to.
So the next 2 Premier League games for Spurs is Chelsea away, which I think is this weekend coming up.
Sunday.
Super Sunday game, 4:30, and then following that they play Arsenal. At home. So 2 huge games. You'd think, if and it's probably a dream scenario, but if they were to take 6 points from those games, they then play Palace away, and then it's Liverpool at Anfield. So that game itself is looking to be a special game, whatever happens. But I fairly neutral in this situation. I've had a soft spot for Spurs. Pretty much. I love Dimitar Berbatov when that kind of era of Spurs really kind of endeared me to that team. But I like Mourinho. I like most of the Spurs players. I think there's very few players in that Spurs team that are unlikable. I don't know whether you would agree with that, John. Like, there's no one in that team that you look and you go like, what an absolute arsehole. Like, I really hate that guy. I mean, Eric Dyer maybe comes close to that.
Yeah, do you know what? If I didn't watch the documentary, I would have said Eric Dyer, probably Dele Alli.
Yeah. But they're
Who?
quite soft characters, really, like in the documentary.
Yeah, but then I think watching that documentary made me look at the Spurs players on a human level rather than fan level, and they're not bad people. They want to win, and I was actually watching that documentary envious. Thinking they've got such a good squad. Like Son, to me, he'd walk into Arsenal's team. Kane walks into Arsenal's team. Lo Celso, in my opinion, walked into Arsenal's team 110%. The whole back 4 probably walked into.
I don't know why you've chosen Arsenal, though. That's no measure of any success.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm just saying it as an Arsenal fan. Too. I'm looking over, and I am jealous, and I'm thinking. At the time, I remember we were doing pods around that time when Jose went there, and I was saying I want Jose because I know there's some good players there. Like Ozil, for me, is a world-class player. You don't just stop becoming a world-class player, and I think Arsenal needed someone like Jose, because if Jose came out and said recently, I had a couple of weeks ago that he was like one of the best players he's ever coached, or one of his favorite players, or something words to that effect. So he would have got in there, he would have got him playing. And you definitely would have got some of those Arsenal boys who are, looks like they're on a holiday every week. Got them playing. There's not a bad squad there, and I think it's a mentality thing. And I just think that's where Jose is at. He works at that high level when it comes to the mentality. I'm just looking over that road there, just a little bit envious of what's happening there, because it's top 4 for me is definite. Like they've definitely thrown that up. Their squad's really, really good. It's just how consistent can Liverpool be with all these injuries? City, I don't know what's going on with them, but I think if Spurs can keep up this consistency, they don't get any long layoff injuries like they did last season to Kane and Son, then I'm a little bit worried.
Fair enough. I think another good example of that with players that kind of from Spurs that would get into the Arsenal team, I genuinely think Ryan Sessegnon would get quite a lot of game time if he was at Arsenal, and yet he's out on loan at Hoffenheim in Germany.
Scored his first goal at the weekend.
He scored his first goal, in a 3-3 draw, I think. But yeah, I think it's different how times have changed really from sort of 6-7 years ago to what they are now with Spurs and Arsenal. Let's move then on to Arsenal. I mean, we kind of covered a lot of it there, to be honest. But Greg, you had a point about Arteta that you dropped in the group chat before about maybe is it the hand he's dealt or is it him? Can't remember how you actually worded it.
Yeah, because I think that Arteta is doing what a lot of people thought Mourinho would do at Spurs. And I wanted to know, John, from your perspective, is it to do with...
This is why Boothy's not on the show today, by the way, either. He's running from this question.
Yeah.
Whatever's about to come.
I'm fronting it up. Go on.
Is it Arteta that is the problem, or are the players just not playing for him? Do you think that it's... Who's to blame for this kind of thing going on? Because I think that Arteta... Oh, no, tell me what you think.
I just think the squad's not good enough. I think, when he came in, you could see what he was trying to do, but you could see the mistakes we were making, making the Spurs, North London derby, making that dreadful back pass. I think if he doesn't do that, we win the game. David Luiz doing crazy things. I just think there's just a calamity in every player. There's like a massive flaw in every player. I mean, you look at, we sold Oliver Giroud, we got Lacazette. Giroud's barely getting a kick in the ball for Chelsea, but he's starting for France, and Lacazette isn't. It just goes to show Lacazette's not a top 4 player, in my opinion. I do think Arteta does have to shoulder some of the blame for sure, because I think tactically he just hasn't adapted. He's come in, he's had something that worked. We won the FA Cup, and Arsenal like a cup team, but they've won the FA Cup, and he just and teams have figured out Arsenal, and he just hasn't adapted. It's taken him to game 9 to play Aubameyang down the middle, where he when Lacazette hasn't really been playing well, or Nketiah. So I definitely think it's him. I do think there's something going on there that's not right. I mean, you've got Guendouzi, who's out of the squad because of ill discipline. You've got something going on with Ozil, which ain't right. He's not getting the game time, even though Arsenal can't create paper mache, right? And you've got now Pepe, who's been begging for a chance, given his chance, he's headbutting people. So there's something going on. I mean,
he's learned from his namesake, isn't he? The other Pepe.
Right?
Psycho, yeah. When you posted that in the group chat, Pepe's been sent off, I was like, Pepe plays for Porto or wherever he is now, because headbutting someone. But yeah, sorry, John.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, when Wenger came in, our discipline was poor for a while. Like Vieira was getting sent off every other week, right? But I don't know. I just think we've gone a bit stale. It's gone a bit flat. I really thought we would kick on, given the fact that we beat we beat Liverpool and City and Chelsea. Beat United. I thought that we would start to kick on, and it just hasn't worked. And I can't put my finger on it. Like something isn't right. And I think I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Pepe situation, because the way he came out after the match and was really scathing of Pepe, wasn't doing that when David Luiz was pulling down Raheem Sterling last season. And it's almost like he's got his favourites, and I don't know, maybe it's a bit too early for him. It's this job. He seems to have his favourites. You got Williams playing most of the time, and I think he might have got a knock at half, and he got pulled off at half time. Otherwise, he would have probably played 60, 70 minutes, and he's just playing horrendously. And I don't know. I just think he's got his favourites. Some Kia Jarapshin loving going on. I just think I can see a sticky end for him if he doesn't turn this around very, very soon. Because the Arsenal, as you know, the Arsenal fans are probably one of the most out there fans. And when the AFT TV guys get going and the banners start coming out, managers' heads roll. So I think if he don't turn the corner pretty soon, I think he's going to be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting just to go back to you saying that, Lacazette's not a top 4 player, and Ozil kind of falling off the wagon as such, and Pepe going from quite an exciting talent at Lille, I think it was in Ligue 1, and coming over and he's, you know, failing to really light it up anytime he gets on the pitch as well. Is Arsenal turning into a kind of a culture where players almost, you can see they're falling out of love with the game? There's something there just in the makeup of the club, I think, that seems to just make these players just seize up in their career progression. I mean, even to some extent, and generally he has bucked that curve, but Aubameyang, even, like, if you take Aubameyang when he was at Saint Etienne and then when he was at Dortmund, he was on this like crazy career arc where he was probably like a 30-goal season guy, and even he is kind of getting dragged into that Arsenal like just energy that seems to just sap players. And I think part of that, as mentioned, is things like AFTV, is awful fans like Piers Morgan piping up every time, you know, something, you know, some minor inconvenience in the club. He's on Twitter and he's kind of like a, you know, he's a chip off Donald Trump's shoulder, really. Fucking Piers Morgan, like, just a horrible guy. So you've got all of these like negative influences around the club. And then also, I think the other factor, and this is something that I think Man United are almost over, but if you look at Ferguson era Man United, there's not that much of a... And I know Ferguson is sort of like a director of football or whatever at Man United, but there's not that much of a hangover in the dressing room from that era. Certainly player-wise, I don't think there's too many players still at Man United that played under Ferguson. I know, obviously, Michael Carrick is assistant. Ollie Solskjaer is the manager. Like, you know, those things aside. Whereas I think with Arsenal, there are quite a few... actually, I'm thinking
Lacazette was there.
Laka, Bellerin, Aubameyang. They're all Wenger. You know, like the Wenger era is much more fresh in the dressing room at Arsenal.
Recently, right? Didn't Ferguson retired 2014?
Yeah, 13 even maybe.
Yeah, there's gonna be that. Yeah, there's gonna be that. The reason why I put hashtag Wenger in is because even in our worst time, and we had the likes of Diaby's, the Nilsons,
great players,
midfield, Bentners, we would never. Aliadier, we would never go. Although Aliadier was around when we were good, to be fair, he just never got the game time. We never had, it was never as bad as I see it now. I mean, in terms of, we might be finishing fourth and, you know, we might take up 8-2 here and there, but Arsenal always had that thing where we played really good football and we'd always go on a run. You know, when the sun came out, you know, we'd always go on a run and pip Spurs to the top four or pip someone else, and we'd get in there top four. And even when we didn't, we were just fifth. We never like down where we are now. You know, 9 games, 4 defeats, 1 draw, 4 losses. I mean, that is mid-table. Arsenal are a mid-table team now. That's like, reminds me of a David Moyes Everton team or whatever, you know, that just can't quite get it together. You win one, everyone's gassed. Yeah. You lose your next 3. That is mid-table in itself, you know. Yeah. And under Wenger, it was never, ever, ever like this, ever. Even when our teams were horrendous, there was like no talent in there. It was never like this. And I just don't think Arteta's the man for the job. I'd take Pochettino at this rate. I just think we need someone else who's a bit more. He's just got way more experience. You can get the players going. And I just think his first job, maybe he might be trying to be too Pep-like. He's really dictating everything. I mean, there's rumours coming out of the club that players feel a bit restricted. Like, he's very much like, run here, do this, check that. Yeah. And you can hear him if you watch, especially now in the crowd, you can hear him constantly talking. It's like me when I do that, but I'm coaching under 12s. You know, you have to do that. You have to, because they'll just be walking around otherwise. These are professional footballers. They need to have some identity. Apart from Bellerin making that run, again, and then playing in Saka, like very, very sideways, very methodical. It's just not. I don't know. I just think we need something else. I'm not necessarily saying he needs to go now, but I think if he gets to the end of the season and we, I don't know, win a FA Cup or get far in a cup and still finish like 8th or 7th, I think that's not good enough, not for Arsenal, and I think he would need to go.
Yeah. Bellerin. Sorry,
just-
you go, Greg.
Just one question, John. Do Arsenal fans have the same sort of Arsenal fans and the culture at Arsenal? Do they have that similar love or the sort of same love that Chelsea fans and Chelsea culture do for Frank Lampard?
With what player?
With Arteta, you said.
Oh, with Arteta.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So obviously Arsenal with Arteta,
Yeah.
Chelsea with Frank Lampard. What is the
No, definitely
same kind of love, or is it?
I think Arteta, wasn't he a panic buy with Mertesacker when like Arsenal got a paste in and there was still some time in the January transfer window or something like that. I think he came with Mertesacker and stuff. I mean, I don't think he was there long enough, and he didn't win us anything major. He wasn't the reason why we won the FA Cup after however many years of not winning the trophy. You know, it was people like Walcott, you know, Olivier Giroud, you know, people like that who were like the people who you see in your mind winning it. Like Arteta was good, he kept things ticking over, but it was a bit El Neni for me. Like he was there, you know, he was a part of the team, but he weren't. So he hasn't got that. You got a Frank Lampard scoring the winning goal to make them win the league. You know, he's got Champions League final. He was there such a long time. No, they don't. I don't think he's got that credit in the bank. I think that's what you're getting at. I don't think he's got that credit in the bank in the same way that I think the reason why he's getting more credit in the bank is because he's worked with Pep and Man City. I think that's what's giving him the credit in the bank, not his Arsenal career.
Right.
Yeah, I would always consider him more of an Everton legend than he is anything to do with Arsenal really as a player. I was going to mention that it's Bellerin and Aubameyang, the only two Arsenal players that have played every minute in the Premier League so far this season. Two of only 22 players across the Premier League.
Everyone keeps letting him down. That's why.
Yeah,
Putting Reece Nelson, apart from that moment where he robbed Van Dijk, he hasn't really scored. He hasn't really done anything. You know, Saka's probably the only one who I think's actually playing at his level.
Yeah.
I think everyone else is just kind of coming in. They're not really playing at the level. And I think although Partey's a great signing and we need him, it's just not enough. I think we need. I mean, there's talk of Eriksen. I don't know about that, but I don't see him being much better than Ozil. You might as well get Ozil back in, right?
Yeah.
But I do think we need that creativity. We don't have a Fabregas player in our midfield, an Eriksen or Ozil. We don't have that player. So that final pass, even Alexander Song, all them think balls he used to play for Van Persie, like we don't have that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why when we're just not finding. But I swear it's like David Luiz missing out the midfield. You know, playing through balls to Aubameyang. It's just we need something else.
Yeah. No, completely agree. I mean, I do think Eriksen as a real outside chance could be on the radar for Arsenal. I think this January, because he's not getting many minutes under Conte in Milan. Greg, 2 Spurs players have played every minute so far in the Premier League for Jose. Do you know who they are? Could you guess?
Højbjerg and Lloris.
Yep. Brilliant. Well done. Points to that man. Let's move on to our show title, I guess, which we won't spend too much time on, but we're going to look at the team of the season so far. And there was a team that I'd seen yesterday. Someone put this forward as their team of the season so far. I think this was probably a Chelsea fan, but they've gone for Edouard Mendy in goal, Reece James, Wesley Fofana, Thiago Silva, which is controversial, and Andy Robertson at the back. Then a midfield of Grealish, Fernandes, and James Rodriguez, and then a front three of Son, Kane, and Salah. Now, I think some of those are nailed in. I think I would probably agree with some of those being in there. But let's go through them, I think, maybe one by one. And just if anyone has any other alternatives, please bring them forward. So Mendy in goal. Obviously didn't start the season for Chelsea, but since he has come in, he has been pretty epic.
Yeah, that's solid for me. Yeah, he stayed
solid, and I think that's more of a reflection on the other goalkeepers.
Yeah.
Right.
You just look at like fantasy football. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'll get him. I'll get Ramsdale. and then everyone's just letting in goals left, right, and centre. And since he's come in, they've kept a hella clean sheet. So
Yeah,
I can't argue with that.
I think McCarthy's been my goalie in fantasy football. He scored quite a few points, so maybe he would probably be a consideration for backup goalkeeper in this team. Then we got Reece James in at left back. Reece James at left back. Oh, no, sorry, right back, because Robertson's
he's right back. Yeah.
Robertson's left back. Thoughts on him? I mean, he's had an amazing season so far, I would think.
Yeah, he's done well. Trent hasn't really, before the injury, wasn't really doing it as well. It's been more Robertson. I can't think of another standout right back at the moment. I think who's the right back for
Brighton?
Leicester. No, Leicester.
Oh.
Is that James Justin?
Yes, and then you've also got Tarek Lamptey with Brighton, who's been
right back too,
very good as well.
I'd argue for Tarek Lamptey.
Yeah, he got sent off, didn't he, yesterday?
Yeah, apart from that, James Justin's been really good as well. But yeah, I'd argue. I think James has been better than him. I'd argue for Tarek Lamptey. I'd go with Lamptey on that one.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree with that. Greg, anyone else you'd want to throw in there?
No.
Yeah,
Luca Digne's left, isn't he?
Yeah, Digne's a left back. Yeah, and he's a good consideration as well.
Okay.
Wesley Fofana. I think what we'll do is we'll leave him in. I think he's been really good, and he kind of continues this long line of great centre backs being signed by Leicester and dropping into that team. But we'll look at the other position here at centre back, which is Thiago Silva. My alternative to Thiago Silva would actually be Kurt Zouma, who has played, I think, 8 out of the 9 games for Chelsea this season. And the one particular stat that I wanted to touch on is his aerial duels. He, out of 44 aerial duels, he's won 38, which puts him at the second highest percentage in the league for aerial duels. And the only guy higher than him is Ruben Diaz with City, but Diaz has only had 16 total aerial duels. So he's basically got the same percentage, but for way over double the amount of aerial duels. And obviously he's been, part of this very secure Chelsea defence as of the last kind of month and a half. Is he overlooked as a defender? I feel like he is. I feel like we never really hear singing the praises of Kurt Zouma because he had a slightly slower start to his career. Went away on loan and now he's come back. But I think he's an outstanding player. Great.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. I think when he was at Stoke, that team was awful. Everton, when he was on loan there, I think when he's around those quality players in a good team, playing week in, week out, you can see he's cutting out some of the mistakes he was making in those teams as well. And I think having Thiago Silva next to him, I'd argue, I'd flip a coin for me. Either one of those two, I think have been both outstanding, given the fact that we chastised Thiago Silva a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
that's all wrong.
I think another argument, and I'm sure if Levi and Tom were on the show, is Fabinho, who has put in some remarkable performances at centre back this season. I'm just looking at there's only a handful of players that have won more tackles this season than Fabinho, although I think for the purposes of this we'll consider him a midfielder, although I do suspect he's going to be playing the lion's share of the season at centre back. Robertson, you mentioned Luca Digne, or Dean as they
I
say.
hate that, man. Luca Dean, he's from Sunderland. Give him that accent; he deserves it.
Yeah, he's been very good. couple of assists, I think, against Fulham the weekend. Who would you take if we're saying those two, Robertson or Dean? Dean from Goodison.
I'm
Greg.
going
Greg.
Dino.
And John?
Robertson,
yeah. I think I would just about side with Robertson. His assist for Jota's header
Yeah, that was class.
was quite remarkable. So, I think he just about edges it. Everton have obviously had some very shaky moments, including almost the entire second half against Fulham. They were definitely on the ropes. Whereas I don't think we'll see quite the same kind of game play out when Liverpool come up against Fulham. So we'll leave Robertson in. So next up we've got Grealish, Jack Grealish.
move on. He's got to be in there.
He's in there, yeah. No brainer. Bruno Fernandes. Has
someone to take the penalty, isn't you?
has he been as good as
Yeah, no, game out.
If you're looking at
in there?
like a squad, I'd have your Højbjerg in there. If you're looking at it, like I'm going to send these guys out for a match, you need someone to protect the defense, right? And as a lineup, you know, you're talking about players that have probably got high numbers and are playing well. But yeah, I'd definitely be having Højbjerg in there over him, in my opinion.
Yep, no, nice. Højbjerg leads the league on tackles won. Also, I think recovered loose balls as well. He's well up there. He's 5th in the league. Interestingly, Oriol Romeu is second in the league for that. So you can see how good that Southampton midfield was last year with those two. Maybe you don't need both of them in the same team, but
they celebrated getting rid of him.
Yeah, which is crazy. I think he's been. I would put Højbjerg in. He'd be one of the first names on the sheet for me. I think he's been a huge part of why Spurs have suddenly emerged as a more consistent kind of powerhouse in the Premier League. So yeah, I think does Bruno Fernandes give up his place, or does James Rodriguez give up his place for Højbjerg?
Imagine Højbjerg and James Rodriguez.
Yeah, I think Fernandes.
Yeah. Fernandes got.
Okay, yeah. I'll yield and agree with that. Rodriguez, he was quite poor against Fulham at the weekend, but other than that, he's been quality. He's kind of injected a good amount of creativity. He's kind of exactly what maybe Arsenal are missing. That luxury player that can see a pass that no one else can, has the technical ability to actually execute that as well.
The good thing about him as well, or the thing that people might be missing in terms of his assist numbers, he reminds me of David Silva. He's playing that pass before the assist.
Yeah.
That makes it. David Silva used to do that all the time. Like he'd play that crucial pass and then it would get crossed in and then there'd be a goal. And that happened on the weekend. Like, he played that ball quick. He got it out of his foot, played it quick to Digne, who then put it in, and I can't remember if it was
Decore's goal, I think, was it?
Decore's goal. I think it was Decore's goal.
Or maybe it was Calvert-Lewin's second, actually. Yeah.
And he's done that like a lot this season. He has got some assists, but he's playing that defense splitting pass into a channel or really quickly that the team like, whoa, where did that come from? Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, they've lost their striker. The ball comes in and they don't know where Calvert-Lewin is or whatever. And I think he's class. I think he's been very, very good.
And hasn't he got like the least sprints and like the least yards covered or something ridiculous as well?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, I know he had that after a couple of games. I don't know where he's at now.
He had like one sprint or something.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave James in there. So then that brings us on to the front three. Son and Kane. Can you argue against either of those two being in this team?
Move on. Next one.
But then this does,
unfortunately, move on.
It does raise the question of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and whether because surely he's probably fighting with Kane for that position in the team of the season here.
Yeah, he is, but I think he's, as you said, you need your backup goalkeeper in McCarthy. He's a backup striker. If Kane's not, he's got a little knock or whatever. He's not firing, or you sub him on. It's almost like a like for like, to a degree.
Yeah, there was a crazy stat that I saw. I'll see if I can get it up now, but it was across the top 5 or the big 5 European leagues. I think Calvert-Lewin. Yeah, so you've got Lewandowski's got 11 goals for Bayern. Haaland, Zlatan, and Calvert-Lewin have all got 10. And then next up is Son and Mbappe with 9 each. But it is quite remarkable what Calvert-Lewin is doing this year. So, yeah, like you say, backup is probably a safe bet. Kane, I think, is providing in other ways that still warranting his place in the team. Should touch on there as well. Zlatan is absolutely incredible this year. Quick question, which is a yes or no from both of you, or whatever the answer may be. But does Zlatan make Serie A look bad, or does Serie A make Zlatan look good? Is that a fair? Are they the same answer?
I think that's the same question.
But yeah, basically, like, is he is he only performing? Could he only do it in Serie A at the age that he's at?
No, I don't think so. I think he would do it here. He did it here. It wasn't that long ago where he was doing it here. He's not Kane. He's not going to be prolific, but I definitely have him now on a swap deal of Lacazette for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Zlatan, I think, would turn around any team. Milan are also one of only 6 teams across the Big 5 that are yet to lose a game this season. They have won 6, drawn 2. Other teams in that list, we've got Wolfsburg, Sassuolo, Bayer Leverkusen, Juventus, and Atletico Madrid, who obviously had a 1-0 win over Barcelona, I think, this weekend. Crazy stat here as well. Atletico Madrid have conceded only 2 goals in like 8 or 9 games this year so far, which is quite remarkable. I mean, I think Simeone is a manager that at some point I think he will move on from Madrid, and hopefully we'll see if he can do it elsewhere in the world. I'd love to see him in the Premier League as a manager. But yeah, that final place then in our team of the season so far is Salah at the moment, I guess, in this right wing position. Anyone that you would have other than Mo Salah? I mean, he has been very consistent. I guess you could argue Mane could be flexible enough to play that position. They don't have to be sort of rigidly stuck into that position.
No, I'm having Salah.
Richarlison, maybe, if he hadn't had the 3-game ban following the Merseyside derby. We saw, obviously, 40 seconds into his return to the Everton team, he blazes through and sets up Calvert-Lewin for a goal against Fulham.
No, I think I'd have Salah. He's just a little bit more clever and got more finesse than Richarlison. I think in terms of Mane, again, I'd say exactly the same things. And I think you've got Son for all the running and the chasing and the donkey work and all that. If you're going to have Mane in there, I think you take out Son. And that's a matter of opinion of Liverpool versus Spurs fans and who they prefer. But you've got to have Salah in there, in my opinion, and you've got to have Kane, and really you've got to have Son.
Yeah. I think then if we lock that in, but some honourable mentions, like you said, James Justin for Leicester. I think Declan Rice is having another great season. I think he's a player that just flies under the radar and people don't maybe notice the things he's doing. But also David Moyes' new Fellaini, as they're calling him in Souček, has been another good, solid player this year. I think who should, for me, he'd be making the squad at least at this point in the season.
Reguilon at left back for us is quite impressive. But he gets quite excited. That's the only thing. He like when he does a good job, he gets a bit excitable and then sort of like slides all over the place. But he had Mahrez in his back pocket, like on Saturday. Played incredibly well. Which is
a great achievement. And N'Golo Kante continues to kind of impress, statistically at least. I think another player that kind of maybe people don't appreciate what he does. I think there was a moment in the Chelsea game this weekend where he intercepted a ball and then he pinged the ball like cross field like Paul Scholes would, and I just thought like that's N'Golo Kante. Like we would never, if you listed out like his attributes, you would never put like long passing or like cross field passing. And I think he is just a brilliant player, N'Golo Kante, and he still is. I think he scored for France on the recent international break as well, which was a rarity. But yeah, I think Kante for me as well would make the team. Probably, him or Højbjerg. You couldn't have both, but excellent players nonetheless. We'll do a really, really quick social media roundup here because I am aware we've been on for an hour. So let's go very quickly here. So hello and welcome to the social media roundup for BTF 57. First up, we spoke about the new coronavirus regulations that will allow 4,000 fans or up to 4,000 fans to attend games. I think that are in the tier 1 category, and then it goes tier 2, 2,000 fans, tier 3, no fans. Greg, I'll come to you on this one. Is 4,000 fans, a good step forward, and will that make a difference in the games?
It's a step in the right direction, and it will make more of a difference to Championship, League One, and League Two, and they're the clubs that need that little bit of difference at the moment.
Okay. Next up, our topic was Spurs being top of the table right now. Can they stay there? Come to the Arsenal fan, Mr. John Miller, on this one.
I think they'll definitely stay there and they'll be floating around the top 3 or 4 for majority of the season. But I think if Liverpool get through this, then I think Liverpool will win the league. The sticky period that they've got now with injuries, I think Liverpool will win the league.
Nice. Just as I have come to an Arsenal fan there on a Spurs issue, I'll flip back to the Tottenham fan in the room to talk about Arteta. Has he been dealt a bad hand here with this Arsenal squad, or is he part of the issue, Greg?
I think that he has been dealt a really bad hand, but also I think, and John's not going to like this, but I think Arteta moving to Arsenal has impacted Man City more than it has Arsenal.
Nice. And then finally on the show this week, which you can check out either on twitch.tv/the BTF podcast, or you can listen on Spotify, iTunes, all good podcast providers, or you can go and watch it on YouTube. We spoke about, our team of the season so far. Now I'm going to bring up 2 players here, or 2 positions rather. So we've got in the midfield, John, would you take Bruno Fernandes or Pierre-Emile Højbjerg?
Højbjerg.
All day? Greg,
all day long.
You agree with that?
Every day of the week.
And another Spurs player versus an Everton player here. We've got Harry Kane or Dominic Calvert-Lewin as centre forward. Greg.
Harry Kane every day of the week. Every day.
I can see a pattern here.
There's not too many times I agree with Spurs fans, but on this occasion, yeah.
But you will have to check out the full show to make sure that there are some players that don't play for Spurs in our team of the season so far, and that is the social media roundup for BTF 57. Cool. All right, boys. Well, there's the show. Johnny, you're watching I'm a Celeb?
I am, got it on record, so I'll be forwarding the adverts. I actually like watching it a bit late.
A little bit later, yeah.
Forward the adverts.
Is that with Sky Plus or Sky, whatever it's called?
Virgin,
yeah, we're on the same. Greg, have you been watching it? Seen any of it?
Nah. I've been keeping up to date with your tweets, though. Yeah. I feel like I know what's going on just by checking out your Twitter
every
feed.
now and then, one pops. I'm going to go off and watch that as well. But same time, same place next week. We'll be back, so hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks for watching, and both of you, thanks for joining me today for the show. I also feel a little bit better. I feel like the tempo of the show has kind of ousted a little bit of my coldiness, so I'm sure hopefully let that continue. But we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching.